Hey class, in this video we are going to be learning some HTML and we're going to build our first web page. Um, Hopefully this recording is not too noisy. There's construction happening on both sides of my apartment today, but we're just going to go for it. Um, yeah, we're just going to get started by writing some HTML and we'll get right into it. The first thing we need to do to write HTML is to set up a text editor and set up a project. And so we're going to make a very simple website. And so we're going to get started with that. So on the class page, if you go to topics and go to web, we're going to see a few links that will be useful for getting started. So we're going to be learning HTML in this video. This link is the Mozilla Developer Network article on HTML or Hypertext Markup Language. MDN or Mozilla Developer Network is kind of the best resource for HTML language. So if you want to, learn stuff, you can look at their tutorials, you can read their guides, and they also have a reference for everything that you would want to use in HTML. So if you click on one of these guys, give you a description, it'll give you examples, it'll kind of explain everything, how it works, shows you which browsers it works in. It also shows you other related stuff. So this is the best resource for like looking up information about HTML. So we may consult this later. The next link you'll want to go to is this link to Sublime Text. Sublime Text is a text editor. It's sort of like Microsoft Word, but it's like stripped down. It doesn't have all the formatting and other things that Word does because it's not really designed to make documents that look like documents that you would publish. It's more designed to write text for code and for projects that use text. So it's a little stripped down. It has some other features that are more useful for when you're writing code versus when you're just writing, an essay or a paper or something like that. And so there's lots of different text editors. These days, I think VS Code is kind of the most popular one. I'm a little old school. I still prefer Sublime Text, mostly because it's just a lot faster and simpler. You could really use any text editor if you've done this before and you're more comfortable with VS Code or something like that. That's totally fine. The text editor doesn't really matter. It's really just what we're using it for. So I'm going to use Sublime, and so if you want to follow along and have things look the same, I recommend using Sublime. But if you want to use something else, that's perfectly fine. There's no reason why you need to use Sublime. All right, so I already have it on my computer. If you don't have it, you would click the download button here, and it'll download. You can install it. It's pretty straightforward to set up, and you can use it on Mac or Windows. So it'll work either way. So if you don't have it, go ahead and download it and just open it and throw it into your applications folder or install it on Windows or whatever and get ready. If you have any issues with that, let me know. I can go over it. But I have Sublime on my computer already, so I'm just going to go ahead and open it up. So I'm just going to open the Spotlight and type in Sublime and just open Sublime Text. And so when you open Sublime Text for the first time, you're going to see just like a blank window like this. And that's okay. We're gonna go over a couple things that you may want to set up before you get started with your project. But this is what it's going to look like when you first open it. And the style of Sublime Text it may be different depending on what your computer setup is. So you may see something that looks different than what you see on my computer, but it's really all the same stuff. The highlighting, the color theme might be a little bit different, but if that's the case, don't worry about it. If it's confusing, again, we could talk about it. We could compare yours and mine in office hours or something like that. But if it looks a little bit different, like different colors, that's not a big deal. Okay, so we've got Sublime Text open, but before we get started, we really want to create a project folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Finder, and I'm going to go to my desktop and go to my MMP 100 folder that I created earlier this semester. And I'm going to make a new folder to hold all my web project stuff. So I'm going to create a new folder here and just call this web. And in Sublime, unlike Windows, you can actually open an entire folder in the text editor, and you can see, sorry, Microsoft Word, not Windows. This works the same in Windows and Mac. But in Sublime Text, in both cases, you can actually open a folder so you see all the contents of the folder. So we don't have anything in our folder right now, but if I drag this folder onto Sublime Text, it's going to open up this little window on the side that will show us all the files that we're using in our file system. And when we're building a website, the files tend to reference each other. Remember, we talked about links, so we link between pages when we're building a website. So it's really important to know where we are in our documents. The documents all kind of look the same as well, so it's easy to get confused when you're editing a document. You might be editing the wrong document. So it's good to have your folders open here. If you close Sublime and you want to open it again, there's a couple ways you can do it. One is you can just drag the folder onto the Sublime icon on your dock. My dock is over on the left over here. Whoops. Yours might be at the bottom of your screen or on the right. Wherever it is, you can just drag this folder onto the Sublime icon and it'll open like that. If you want to do it through the UI, you can go up to Sublime Text, go to File, go to Open. And if you open a folder, on Windows it'll actually say Open Folder, and you can use that option instead. But on Mac, it just has Open, but you can open a folder if you click on the folder and click Open. It'll open this window here. So again, you want to make sure that you can see the files that you're working with on the left over here. So now we're going to start creating our first document. When we make a website, the first document that we make is always going to be index.html. That is the document that the browser will look for when it goes to the address for your website. This is just a standard convention. This is just how most websites work. And the other thing is it has to be a lowercase I. So that's a little bit of a tricky part. The whole index.html, that whole name for the file needs to be lowercase letters. So some people get tripped up with that. So before I start editing my HTML, I'm going to save my document as an HTML document. You can actually notice down here in the bottom right corner, it says plain text. And when I save the document as HTML, this is going to change to HTML, and that's going to change the way that the highlights work. So I'm going to save this. So I'm going to hit Command S or Control S, and I'm going to find my web project. And I'm going to name this document index.html. And just as a reminder, if you don't see all those files, just click on this little drop down here and make sure you are in the right place and click Save. And you'll see that index.html file appear in your folders over here. So if you don't see that, try doing it again, or we could go over it in office hours. And now you can see down here, Sublime knows that this is an HTML file. And so one of the things that Sublime does for us that's really nice is it adds color highlighting to different types of text. And that makes it easier for us to see the structure of our document. Okay, so we're going to write our first HTML file. And HTML is a little bit weird. It's a markup language. And what that means is that it uses markup to distinguish between content, like the text that we see on the screen, and like rules about where to show that content. So we looked at a brief view of this in our lecture the other day. Let's take a look at it again. Remember, any website that you look at, you can actually see the HTML behind it. So any website, including our Open Lab website, if I go to View, and this is in Chrome, in Developer, and go to View Source, there we're going to see all of our HTML. And we're going to write pretty much the same thing that we are going to see here. Not quite as much. There's a lot more info in here because it's a much more complex website than what we're going to make. But you can see our HTML right here. It looks kind of goofy, but once you get started writing it, you'll get used to it. So this is what markup looks like. You can see there's a lot of these little angle brackets, or you might call them a greater than or greater than and less than sign. I usually call them angle brackets. The angle brackets contain the sort of meta information, or the information about the document, how to format the document. And then in between those those little brackets, we have the content of the document. So let's go ahead and start writing our HTML page. I have the font size increased a lot, so I'm hitting Command plus or Control plus. You don't have to have it set up that way. Your text by default might be like pretty small, but I'm going to increase the text just to make it more visible on the video. So just to go over that syntax real quick before we actually write some. So in HTML, we are going to have tags. So we call them HTML tags. And the way we know what a tag is, or the way we kind of format it, is that we use an angle bracket, an open angle bracket, or a less than sign. And then we use the tag in HTML. So the first tag of an HTML document is just going to be the HTML tag. That just tells the browser, hey, this is an HTML document. And then we close that with a closing angle bracket or a greater than sign. And then the content goes in between this tag, and then we have a closing tag at the bottom. So it's a little confusing because we have the closing, we have an open bracket, closing bracket, and then we have an open tag, which is this tag, and then we have a closing tag that looks like this down here. Same thing, except we put a backslash, or actually that's a forward slash, sorry, a forward slash, and then HTML. So everything that is in between the open tag and the closed tag is content that goes inside of our page. And part of that content is other HTML tags. So this is known as a tree structure. Tree structure, you have like your trunk down here, and then you have branches. And then those branches, sometimes they have other branches. And sometimes, we get leaves and, oh, whoops, I'm covering up my tree drawing. We get leaves and we get other things. So this is known as a tree structure. This first tag is our HTML tag. Then we're going to have two main branches, the body section and the head section. And then in our body section, we're going to have things like headers and paragraphs. We're going to have content, images, all sorts of stuff. And so this is generally referred to as a branching structure or a tree structure. It's how HTML and a lot of other markup languages and coding languages are structured. Okay, that's a lot to know at first. HTML is pretty complicated if you haven't seen it before. So don't worry, we're not going to do a ton of it. We're just going to kind of get a basic website ready. Okay, so as I mentioned, when we start an HTML document, we start with the HTML tag, but there's actually one extra little tag that goes before that. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put an open tag here. Notice one of the things that Sublime does, since it's a coding text editor, is it gives us hints. It kind of sees like, okay, we're writing HTML and we're starting a tag, and here's all the tags in HTML. There's a lot of tags, so it doesn't have the one that we want visible right now. But as we start to type it out, it's going to guess what we're trying to type. So this first tag is actually a special tag. It has a little exclamation point in front of it. And this is just doctype HTML. This just tells our browser that we're starting an HTML document, and then our HTML tags contain the HTML that we're going to use. So this tag actually doesn't have a closing tag. Some tags like images and other things actually don't have closing tags. I'll talk about those as we go through. So the first tag in our HTML document is always this doctype HTML. Then we do our HTML. So again, Sublime is guessing that we want to use HTML. If you want to accept Sublime's suggestion, actually this one is a different suggestion. So I'm gonna get rid of this. Although this is a plugin that I have built in. That just generates that first document for you because it kind of speeds it up if you're writing a lot of HTML. But since we're just learning, we're going to skip that. We're going to go through our correct documents. So, oh yeah, it's a Sublime snippet. So a snippet is like a little bit of code versus a tag. For some reason, it doesn't actually give me an HTML tag. So I'm just going to write this on my own. So then one thing that you're going to notice when you're using Sublime is if I do another closing tag and then a forward slash, notice that it just finished the line for me. So another thing Sublime Text does, which a lot of coding editors will do, is they're going to try to guess. They're going to try to guess what you're doing and try to help you out by adding content. So again, watch what happens. I'm just putting an open tag and a forward slash, and Sublime knows that I started this HTML tag up here, and so it just adds a new one in for me. This can be a little confusing at first. I see a lot of people do this. They go like this, and then they write another HTML tag because they didn't notice that Sublime added this for them. Then your document will look weird, and you'll run into issues. So just be aware of that. And it's perfectly acceptable to take any suggestions that Sublime's going to make. So now we have our HTML document. Everything that goes in between these two tags is going to be part of our web page. Notice also that Sublime, as I mentioned, uses different colors for the different parts of the document. So angle brackets are green, HTML tags are red, and this doc type thing is purple. And as we add more content, we'll see that they all have their own color coding in Sublime, and that kind of helps us as we're coding. It helps us see that we're adding the right content. So for example, if I forgot a bracket, now you can see this HTML tag isn't colored correctly. And so that kind of just shows me right off that there's an issue here. So I can add that in, and now it shows me HTML. So that's interesting. Okay, so the next thing to add is our head section and our body section. Every HTML page has a head and a body section. The body section is stuff that we see on the page. The head section we actually don't see on the page, but it tells us certain information about the page, like the language, styles that we use, maybe the fonts that we use. And that way we can kind of separate the functionality and style from the page with the actual content. So we're going to add a head section. And notice that when I hit enter after hitting head, it moves my cursor over. So Sublime did that for me, and we'll talk about that. This is a formatting thing. It doesn't actually change the functionality of the page, but when we're writing HTML and most programming or markup languages, we use indentations. You can see this big indentation that happened here as a way of sort of showing which elements are inside of other elements. It didn't do that with the head section because the head is kind of like one of the main sections, so it kind of ignores that. But for anything that's inside the head, it's going to be moved over. And Sublime will try to do this for you automatically. You might run into issues with that. If you want to go over formatting stuff, we can talk about it. But I'll try to explain the formatting as I go through it. Okay, so in our head section, one of the main things that we're going to have is a title. And here we're going to actually add some content. So for my title, I'm going to say we're going to be working on a choose your own adventure story. And so I'm going to call this choose your own adventure. And then I'm going to close the title. And Sublime closed the title for me again. A quick note here, if this pop-up comes up, you don't have to purchase Sublime. You can buy a license if you want. I actually did buy a license a million years ago, but I forget what the number is, so I just don't bother putting it in. So this pop-up comes up a lot, but you don't have to buy a license. It's free to use if you want to. You can choose to purchase a license if you want, but obviously you don't have to do that. So if you see this, just hit cancel. Okay, let's save our document. So you can hit Command S or Control S on Windows to save the document. And so we've added our title. And for now, we're actually just going to go ahead and close the head section. And again, Sublime guessed that I was closing the head section. Again, if I put the bracket and then a /, it knows that I'm trying to close the head section. And it moves this back because it shows us that the title section is inside the head section. And a couple other things you'll notice, if I click on a tag, it's going to show me where that tag ends. This isn't that useful right now, but as our document gets longer, it's going to help us to see the structure of the document. Another thing that might be useful as our document gets longer is you can actually collapse these sections. So if you write a bunch of stuff and then you're writing something under it, I can hit this little arrow here and collapse this section of code. And that hides it for a little while. It doesn't delete it, it just hides it so I can work on something else. Okay, there's our head section. Let's add our body section. This is our other main section, and this is where all our content goes. And just like you noticed before, to do this, I'm going to do it again because I did that kind of quickly. I do an open tag. I hit B, O, and there we go. We get body. If I hit enter, it's going to guess. It's going to build all the rest of that for me. So again, this is a little bit different. So Sublime will, kind of give me suggestions. If I start typing B and then O, it finds that I want the body tag. And notice this text right here, it says expands to body and then closing body. So if I hit enter and accept that suggestion, it actually closes that whole tag for me. So that's what I actually do a lot when I'm writing code. Just make the whole thing and then enter it. So in some of these cases, I'm going a little bit slowly so you can see how this works. But in other cases, this is usually what I would do. I would just hit enter, accept that. And then the nice thing is I have the body open and closed. When I hit enter, excuse me, again, it moves over. So now we're lined up with this title section. So this makes it really easy to see the main parts of my document, the head section and the body section. And then when I'm looking in those parts, I can see the content on the page. So our body section has all the text and images and other things that we see on a website. There's a bunch of different tags that we can use here. I'm just going to go over a few kind of basic ones. We obviously don't have time to cover all of them because there's tons, but I'm just going to go over a few basics. So most websites have like kind of a big title at the top. If we look at a couple examples, you can see with this page, web is kind of the main title at the top. If we go to like the NewYorkTimes.com, I don't know why I always use this as an example, but you can see, there's kind of like the main headline here. There's like big headers here, and then there's little pieces of text under the headers. So this is kind of the way that most websites are structured, where we have big headlines and then smaller text under the headlines. And so we have some basic tags that let us designate which parts of the website are which. So for a headline, we use H, and then there's a series of different sizes, H1 through H6. So if I want a big main headline, I'm going to do H1. And actually, I'm just going to see if Sublime will suggest H1 for me and hit enter. And for some reason, it's not closing it for me. There we go. So then the content, just like my title of my H1, is whatever I want to show at the top of the page. That could be choose your own adventure, or maybe it could be something else. They don't have to match. So let's make it something else, and then we'll see what the differences are. So let's say, welcome to, I'm going to tell a story about, maybe about our class, just as an example. You can really tell a story about whatever you want. So I'm going to say welcome to MMP 270, or sorry, 100. I was thinking about my other class. And we'll make my choose your own adventure story will be about this course, just as an example. And so let's put a little exclamation point there. And so now we've got enough of a document that we can actually see what it looks like in the browser. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tab over to the Finder. And here's my HTML document. You can see my default browser is Chrome, which is why you see this little Chrome logo here. If your default browser is like Safari or something else, you may see a different logo there. So I'm just going to double click that. And there you go. You can see welcome to MMP 100. That's the main header for my website. Up here in the tab, you see the title. So that's what the title is for. It's whatever you're going to see in the tab here, but it's also what's going to show up on Google search results. So for example, if I search for our class page on Google, so if I go to Google and I say MMP 100, BMCC, fall 2025, and let's see if the course actually shows up somewhere. I actually don't see it. Let's see if we say web. Oh, you know what? I probably had this delisted, so it's probably not going to show up. But we can use this as an example. This is probably an old version of the course. Okay, this is this is the Open Lab part of the course. But anyway, you can see it says BMCC Open Lab there, and if I go back here, there you can see in the Google results there's the title BMCC Open Lab, and then that course MMP 100 Fall 25 probably matches. Now it's taking forever to load. That matches the main header of the page. So on Google, we're going to see this is the title and then the URL here and then the course header. And so what we put in those different places kind of like changes those results. So let's go back to our page. So here's our header. And if we look at the source, we can go to View, Developer, and View Source. And here's our HTML document. It's exactly the same as obviously what we wrote on Sublime. One thing you notice real quick, see how this says file right here? So when I open the file in the browser, this isn't on the internet. So if I send this link to somebody where it says users/Prof Roberts desktop, this is obviously just on my computer. It's just a file on my computer that I'm loading in the browser. If I send this link to somebody, they're not going to be able to open it. It's just going to be a broken link. So it's not until we publish our website on GitHub, which we'll do in the next video, that we're actually going to be able to see a publicly available website. It's getting a little dark in here, so I'm going to turn on some more lights. All right, that is a little better. Okay, so we've covered most of this stuff already. Okay, so let's talk about attributes for a minute, because this is the other part of HTML that's built into the language. We talked about these already. Oh, we talked about this as well. Okay, so we're almost to links, which we're doing pretty good. Okay, so let's talk about attributes. I forgot this. We'll add some attributes and then we'll come back. So in our HTML, inside of our HTML tags, sometimes we put extra information. And so this happens in the open tag. So you would never see this in a closing tag with the / only in the opening tag. One example of this type of information is sometimes you can specify the language of a document. So I can say HTML, I put a little space here, and I say lang, and then equals en for English. And so this is called an attribute. So an attribute is contained inside of the tag. It's not part of the document. If I had this outside of the tag, you would be able to see it, and that's not something we want. Let me highlight this and see. If I put this out here and refresh the page, you see this here, and that's not something that we want. Also, if you make changes to your document, I didn't mention this, you need to hit the refresh button, or you can hit Command R or Control R on the keyboard. Okay, so we want that to be inside of our tag, so we're going to move it back here. And so this just tells Google or search engines or users that this particular document is in English. There's a bunch of different language. I don't really remember all of the language little abbreviations. I think ES is Spanish for Espanol. I'm sure there's lots of other ones, but we'll just do English as an example. Also, sometimes you'll notice little suggestions like this. Because I have the word adventure down here, Sublime is trying to be helpful in guessing what I'm trying to write here, but if I hit enter, it's just going to put adventure there, which is not what I want. So I'm going to hit Command Z or Control Z to undo that and go back. So if you see, sometimes you'll see suggestions that are not helpful, and you can hit the escape key and it'll disappear, or you can just keep typing and it'll ignore it. But if you hit enter, it'll take the suggestion. Okay, another example of an attribute and another tag that we use. Sometimes we use what's called a meta tag, and there's a lot of different meta tags, but usually we put like one attribute each in the meta tag. So meta tags are meta information. They're information about the document. So you can put lots of different information in there, like what type of device you want it to target, all sorts of different things. One of the main things that we always do is a character set or char set. And for those we have UTF-8. It's kind of the main character set. This probably is not worth going into that much, but this basically just tells the browser which characters, like letters and numbers, to load as it's loading your document. So it's something that we are supposed to put in a document. If you forget it, it's not going to break anything. But that's another example of first a tag that has no closing tag, because it's just meta information, and then second, a attribute. Again, an attribute has a value or a property, and then equal sign, and then quotation marks, and then the value that we assign that property. So that's going to be important in a moment, because that's what we're going to use to create links in our page. So let's add a little bit of content, and then we'll add some links. So after our H1, one of the main sort of like basic building blocks of a website is just a paragraph. And so because of that, the P tag is one of the main tags that we use, and it just stands for paragraph. So when you see P, all this does is set up a paragraph on the page, and any text you put in here will be kind of contained in that paragraph. So I'll make a couple paragraphs so we can see what that means. So I'm going to say welcome to MMP 100 is my header, and then my first paragraph will be in this class we will learn. I'm going to get rid of myself for a second. Many different ways to create multimedia. Okay, so that's going to be my first paragraph, and then I'm going to make another paragraph. I can make as many of these as I want. In my second paragraph, I'm going to say choose which role you would like to have. And then I'll present links as some options. Okay, so I'm going to save this, and I'm going to tab back over to Chrome, and I'm going to hit refresh. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit, so I'm going to hit Command plus, just so we can see the content. You don't really need to do this necessarily, but so here you can see our header, and then notice that there's a break here. So when we make new tags, at least for our headers and our paragraphs, they occupy their own sort of section on the website. So this paragraph comes before this paragraph, and that's not because there's like a line break here. So for example, if I put these on the same line, if I put my paragraph next to my H1, and if I did that with my other paragraph as well, this is all one big line now. You can see this is line number 10. It doesn't really matter if they're all next to each other. It looks the same on my website because the HTML syntax is actually what determines where the content goes. So making different paragraphs is kind of our way of making new lines on like a Word document or a regular editor. I usually do make actual new lines for our paragraphs as well, just to make it easier to read. But it's the paragraph that decides where the content goes. So this is our first paragraph, and you can make it longer. You can have very, very long paragraph. It'll run on to the next line. So I'll demonstrate that just by making the window smaller. So you can see when I make the window smaller, the paragraph gets squished into the space that's available, but each paragraph again is separate from each other. Okay, so we've got a couple paragraphs. Let's add some links because that's really the core of what we're going to be doing with our project. So I'm going to give the viewer or person who's reading the website a couple of options. So we're asking choose which role you would like to have. And so now I'm going to add a new paragraph. I'm going to say I would like to be a, let's say, coder, since we're kind of talking about code. And so I'm going to close that paragraph. And then their second option would be I would like to be an animator. So some people may be interested in animation, and so they would choose that option. Okay, so on its own, these pieces of text are just more pieces of text. They don't go anywhere. But what we want to do is add a special tag called an anchor tag, and that will anchor or link a piece of text to another website or page on our website. So we're just going to make a couple extra pages on our website that they can click on, and we'll go to those pages. And you can put the anchor tag around any text that you want. So when you look at a website, notice how like on our class page, this paragraph here has two links on it, the HTML and the CSS. So the HTML link goes to this HTML page. The CSS link goes to the CSS page. So you can see we have one paragraph here, but we have multiple links. So the anchor tag can go just around the piece of text that you want to be the link. Same thing with Sublime Text. If I click on Text Editor, nothing happens. But if I click Sublime Text, we go to the Sublime Text page. So that's what we're going to add in our document. All right, so for coder, I'm going to use just the word coder. For animator, I'm just going to use the word animator. So what I'm going to do is before I want my link to start, I'm going to put an anchor tag. So I'm going to add a new tag. I'm going to hit A and then a space. Or actually, let's just close this. And then I'm going to put a closing A on the other side. And Sublime helped me out a little bit there. Once I did the /, it could see that this anchor tag was back here, and it added the other anchor tag there. Notice that this is all inside of my paragraph tag. So you can have tags inside other tags, just like all of our paragraph tags are inside of the body tag. That's our tree branching structure. So body is one of our main branches. Then we have a bunch of paragraph branches, and then this paragraph branch has its own little anchor branch. So to make the link work, what we have to do is add an attribute, just like we did with our character set and our language. So to add the attribute, I'm going to go right after the A and hit space. And then this attribute is a shorthand for hypertext reference. So it's a reference to a page in hypertext. So we just use href. I'm going to hit enter, and Sublime is going to add some stuff for me. It adds this little equal sign and these quotation marks. And then what I put in the quotation marks is where it's going to link. This page does not exist yet, but I'm going to write the URL knowing that I'm going to create the page. So I'm gonna make like a separate folder in my web project called story to hold the pages in the story. And I'm just gonna call this one coder.html, just so it'll be easy to recognize. So I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna go back to Chrome and refresh. And now we have a little link here. Notice it has the default blue color. It has the underline. And if I click here, it doesn't find that file. But we can see that it did try to look for the file. So we're going to add that file now. And then I'm going to do the same thing down here with Animator. So I'm going to say href equals story/animator.html. So these are just other HTML pages that I'm going to link to. And if I zoom out a little bit, you can see, that whole line of text a little bit easier. And so now we have these two links, and we just have to add these pages in this new folder. So to do that, I'm actually going to copy a lot of this content because I don't want to rewrite all of this stuff. Most of it is actually going to look basically the same. But I'm going to change the content that's on the page. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to hit Command N to open a new document. You can also go to File, New File, and I'm going to paste this in here and then save it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder. Remember to drop down the Finder window if you need to. I'm going to create a new folder called Story and click Create. And inside here, I'm going to name it after that link. So I'm going to call it coder.html. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to make a new document, Command N. I'm going to Command V, paste this document, and I'm going to save this one as animator.html. And now I just want to update this content so that these pages are different. So I'm going to go to coder.html and use the tabs up here in Sublime because if you're, it's easy to edit this page and think you're editing this page. So just make sure you see which tab is highlighted. A lot of HTML documents look the same, so it's really easy to make that mistake. Also notice that this new story page or story folder has these two HTML files in here. So our folders match what we want our project to look like. Okay. So for coder, I'm going to delete all this stuff. I'm going to leave the main header, and I'm just going to say, you have chosen to be a coder. Your job is taken by a robot. So this is the bad ending to the story. You don't have to have bad endings, but a lot of the time the choose your own adventure has like a bad endings and you start over. So let's give them a chance to start over. So say paragraph, start over. Okay. So then let's go to the animator page and update that content. So I'm just going to select all of this content and delete it. And then I'm going to do a new paragraph and say, you chose to be an animator. You are, let's see, what happens if you become an animator? You are on your way to winning an Academy Award. That's the good outcome. Okay. And we can also have a start over here, just to give them a chance to go back to the main page. Okay, so let's go back and look at our website again. I'm going to refresh this. So now we have, I would like to be a coder, and we see that new content there. This start over doesn't work yet, but we'll set that up in a moment. And I would like to be an, oh, I misspelled would here, but we'll fix that in a second. So you chose to be an animator, you're on your way to winning an Academy Award, and we can start over. Okay, so now we have those 2 pages. Now let's just add in a couple more links, and then we'll be good with our first draft of our website. So I'm gonna go back to index.html and fix this typo. And then I'm gonna go into Coder. So this is gonna be a chance, let's look at these hrefs, because we're going to make another href, another link to go back, and this is going to look a little bit different. So remember our tree structure. So our main folder is web. Our tree structure works for our folders as well. So so if we have our tree, our main folder is web, and inside web we have, like, you know, index.html. And you can have more pages inside the main folder. You can really set it up however you want. But we also have this branch over here called story. And story has 2 pages, animator and coder. And so this, if we look at our file system, you can see that this is, you know, how our file system is set up. We start kind of all the way here at the computer, and then we have branch out into the computer. So we go to users, we go to Prof. Roberts, we go to desktop, we go to MMP 100, we go to web. So this is branch, 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 branch. And then inside web, we have our main page, and then we have another branch with a couple other pages. So everything is like branching off of this main root. So just like our HTML document, we use this branching structure. The key to this branching structure is that when you're on a branch, you can only see what else is on that branch. You can't see back here. When you're here, you can actually see all the branches. You can see all the files on in the other branches. So when we're on index.html, we can see into story, and we can see that there's a coder.html there. And so we can see that story folder. So we put story, and then we put / for folder, and then we can see coder.html. So we can put that right there. When we're on coder.html, let's make a start over link. So I'm going to put an A tag here, and then close it at the end of start over. When I make my href, I can't see the branches that came before me. So what I have to do is just go back. And there's a way that we go back on a computer, which is just ... There's a whole history behind this, but basically just means where you are right now, and ... means one back from where I am right now. So if I'm in story and I go ... I go back to the folder before me, and then I still want to say folder, so I still say /. Then I look for index.html. Okay, and let's just copy this and paste it onto animator so we don't have to repeat that. And now our website will be fully linked up. So I want to be a coder. Let's increase that. Okay, so you chose to be a coder. Your job is taken by a robot. Let's start over. I want to be an animator. You chose to be an animator. You are going to win an Academy Award. Okay, so now all our pages talk to each other. All of our links work. And we have this really basic website. I know this is this has been a long video for what we usually do, because there's a lot of little details to cover. There's a lot of things that will probably be new to you if you've never written a website before, if you've never used a markup language or a programming language before. So if it seems confusing, that's totally normal. It took me forever to learn this stuff when I was a kid. So, you know, it's just part of the learning process. So for your website, obviously you're going to tell your own story. And you have to have at least 5 pages. So I only made 3. You're going to have to make at least 2 more. But you can link your pages however you want. You can make as many pages as you want, or write your story in whatever direction you want to. So I'm going to stop here. In the next video, I'll go over publishing the website on GitHub. So that'll be a little bit shorter. It's a pretty quick process. And then I'll also go over submitting that assignment on OpenLab. So I will see you guys in the next video.